think it's been about 30 seconds here, so hopefully that's given enough time for everybody to join in. So welcome. My name is Sebastian. I'm over here with Bright Spot Marketing, and today we're going over our webinar, Getting Started, Creating a Profitable Incentive. And our speakers today include Michael Butler, CITP, CIS certifications, and he's the VP of Sales. We have Jason Neal, Director of Information Technology, and we have Stephen Curl, Senior Program Manager. And we do want to hear any questions you might have. So click the button below, the little Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, and type in your questions. We'll leave a little bit of time at the end for you for questions, and our speakers will be able to answer those. And just a FYI, this is the third webinar in our series this month, and we're going to be talking about, well, I should say that today we're going to be talking about getting started. These last two webinars, we have must-haves for incentive software platforms and the 5 worst incentive program ideas are on our YouTube page, so you can check those out. Links on the bottom there, and we'll also be sending out a PDF version. So if in case you can't write them super quick, you'll be able to see them after the webinar is completed. We'll send them out to you. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Michael.
Thanks, Sebastian. And getting started, creating profitable incentives, something I'm definitely passionate about. I think we all are. It starts with discovery. It certainly does. Here at Bright Spot, we're process driven, and we actually have this process we're sharing here. DDX, the first step. We think the most important step, discovery. Any profitable incentive, any good designed incentive should start with an in-depth discovery process. So we think that's one of our unique selling points here is that time we would spend with you or any other prospective client to sit at the table and understand your business objective up front and who your audience is, and dig deeper into that audience, demographics, psychographics, interests, mindsets, what's worked, what hasn't. That discovery process we think is a critical success factor to these profitable incentives. And we wanted to start with that. And then the first point we have to share with you is identify your current state. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jason.
And it's so important. We have so many clients that come to us and we have a conversation, and the conversation starts a little bit like this. Hey, I want to get an incentive program. I've committed to my VPs. I'm a little bit behind in getting things together, and we need to have something up in 4 weeks, right? That's the date I committed to. Can you guys get it done? Well, just like Michael said, let's back up a little bit, right? And talk about, discovery. Let's talk about design and have those conversations. And one of those is identifying the current state. It's impossible to know where you're going, right, unless you know where you are. And there's a couple of key things that I want to be able to point out. So one is when you talk about current products and behaviors, this is what everyone thinks of, right? I want to know the products that I want to incentivize on. I want to know the behaviors that I want to incentivize on. But the second question is why? Which ones? And let's even say with current products. So with current products, one of the things that you want to be able to evaluate is not just the products that we want to push, but also the products that are the most profitable, because there's a cost associated with an incentive program. Ultimately, it will pay for itself, but you want to make sure that there's enough profit margin to be able to handle some of those initial costs. And as revenue picks up as the result of your incentive program, you can see that revenue be able to cover the cost of the program. But do yourself a favor. If you have a product, and I'll give a perfect example, right? Let's talk about, one of my favorite brands, which is Sonic. They have an incentive program, right, on their drinks that are half price, and they call it happy hour. Well, something tells me they're not a loss leader on drinks, right? That's probably one of their most profitable segments. So it can bear that long-standing incentive program. I can remember a time where they didn't have half price drinks, right? It's a long-standing incentive program that they have that you can count on and you can depend on, where the majority of the day or a good portion of the day, it's half price. Well, once again, it can not only bear that promotion, but it's one that's been, worked very well for them, but it's evaluating the products that can bear that cost. Also, I'll take these two together, number of transactions and average transaction size. What that leads directly to is when you talk about the drivers for your budget, right? So the number of transactions that you're going to be incentivizing on, you need to have an idea of what those are. And also the average transaction size. Are we talking about a deal that's $100, $1,000, $10,000? You want to make sure your incentive reward strategy is a percentage of that deal size in most cases. So that's going to drive, your budgetary concerns, knowing how many are going to come through in a given time for your contest, and also what those transaction sizes are going to be. A couple of other things here, length of sales cycle. And please, if you haven't had an opportunity, take a look at the other two webinars that Sebastian mentioned, because length of sales cycle is so important. This drives how long a contest you need to be successful, right? So you don't want to have a sales cycle that's 6 months and you have a 3-month contest. You're not going to have very good participation. So another thing to consider, sales cycle is so important when designing and going through that DDX process that Michael mentioned. Also, existing product knowledge. There's your ramp up time. If it's a long-standing product and you've been selling it for years and the field is very experienced in selling it, that's great. They can hit the ball running, right? They've sold it 1,000,000 times. If you got a new product launch, it's going to take a while to just not only communicate the information to the field to help them sell, but for them to engage in those first sales cycles. So you need to have a little more ramp up time if you don't have an existing thorough product knowledge for the particular product that you want to choose. And then one, with me being IT director, you saw that from the title slides, near and dear to my heart is data capabilities. Can you even get the data you want to have to run your program? And don't just stop there, not just the data you want to run your program, but the data you want to prove that your program was successful after the end, right? You want to make sure that those components, and we'll mention this a little later, beginning with the end in mind, you want to make sure that those data components are in place and you have access to the information that you need. The last thing you want is to start a program, you go through and you want to be able to prove ROI or ROO at the end, and you haven't captured the data to be able to do that effectively. So those are just a couple of things we want to talk about when we talk about identifying your current state, some of the things to consider. But Michael, any tips that you'd like to share on this? I'm sorry, I think that's for
the
Steve.
length of sales cycle you mentioned. Yeah. Hey, man, I'll jump in.
Okay,
me, you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it. The length of sales cycle, as the sales leader of the bunch here, you're right. It is critical. You have to match up the offer, the award to the length of the sales cycle. So, you don't want to be giving away, you don't want to have that misaligned.
Yeah, for sure. And Jason, as the IT director, I'm sure you can appreciate that you want people to dig deeper to check with IT to ensure you can get that data that you talked about to run the program. And don't just consider the capability to get that data, but think about how you can integrate. If you're using a CRM, there is the opportunity to integrate via API, or you could, just do a simple CSV file. But look at those options, because the more you can automate, the more it's going to streamline that program for you. And then obviously you also want to consider your profit margins, and that'll help you define your goals and behaviors for the program that you're going to set up. Good point. And when you're defining those goals, you always obviously you want to align with your company's key KPIs and support the overall strategy. So, is your company trying to grow new business, retain key customers? Do you have a new product launching? Consider those things when you're building the structure of your sales contest to make sure it aligns with overall with your company strategy. And we have an acronym we like to use, SMART. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And those are really important elements in a program. If it's attainable, you want to make it attainable, because if you set a program where it's an unrealistic goal, you're actually going to dissuade your sales force to participate. It's going to be discouraging. So, don't make it a ridiculous goal that no one can attain. And then with relevance and timely, those kind of go together. Let's say, for example, that Q3 is maybe a slow period for your company. Keep that in mind when you're structuring the contest. Maybe save some budget to do a bonus offer during that quarter to drive sales. So, for example, Q3, leads into football season. So you could have an offer where you add a sweepstakes overlay on top of the current offer, where each sales gives you an entry into a sweepstakes to win a new flat screen TV for football season. So not only are you driving interest in the product and the sales contest, but it's timely and relevant with that time of year. So, you know, if I were given the opportunity to win a flat screen TV right before football season, it would make me more eager to participate for sure. So make sure that you kind of make those offers seasonal so they're relevant when they're running.
Yeah, that's really good. And then we've got a tip here to keep it simple. We probably say, you know, three goals max. There's another part of this too, Stephen, as you know, it's the actual incentive offer design part. So, you know, that part you're talking about here is getting the information from the client, making these goals measurable. I mean, if it's not measurable, it's not going to be effective. But, you know, when we say 3 goals max, maybe it's even simple offers that what we say here in our shop is 1-to-1 offers, kind of like do this, get that, as opposed to more complex offers where you're having to, I like to say ifs and thens, you know, where if you do this and then you do that. Those are more complex offers. So keep them simple, maybe the number's 3 or less, and leave the complexities for later if it's even necessary. You know, incentive programs are just one element of your entire marketing strategy, but it can be the most effective one in driving business results through these motivational experiences. So the next one we have here is selecting strategic products. Could be even products or services, right? Depending on what you're selling. But, you know, a couple call outs here, payout versus deal size, kind of what we're alluding to a couple minutes ago. The award type and the payout should be relevant to the product cost and revenue. I mean, that's really what we're getting at is those things have to be aligned. They just can't be misaligned. So stickier sale, something to consider, the cost of acquisition of the product, the projected take rate or targeted take rate would be a consideration. Stephen, I think you got a tip here for us.
Yeah, I think it's important when you're structuring these incentive contests, don't just focus on that end goal of selling the product. You know, there are a lot of pre-sale activities that go into that process. So think about deal registrations or referral programs. So incentivize those activities. Basically anything that can be tracked before that sale occurs, consider incentivizing the team for that, because that does ultimately help grow the sales. And then a big one, in my opinion, is incentivizing training. Most companies have a training program, and a lot of them actually have an LMS system. And the good thing about those LMS systems is we can integrate that with our platform, and then you can utilize technology. So when someone completes a training program, they can actually be transferred immediately to our portal to earn points and redeem those for completing that training certification. So think about that when you're setting it up, that you do have the opportunity to leverage technology to your advantage.
Yeah, that's a great tip. You know, we talk about this trend in behavioral incentives that we see, and you know that certification is usually up front after the training, especially in a channel partner program where you're trying to get mind share to that partner rep at the end of the line to take those behaviors. And certifications on the product could be that first step to help pull more of that middle 60% through faster to the ultimate offer or sale that you're after for that through that partner rep. Good stuff.
Well, and I'll pick up here with using technology to your advantage. Of course, you know, I work in technology. I've made my career of it, right? So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. But, you know, we're in the bubble of trust. It's just me, you, and our 30 internet friends. So right now, anyone in sales, Michael, close your ears. When you talk about when do you need to have and engage a partner with incentive software, when you need incentive software, one thing I'll say is, to a certain point, Excel is okay. Excel is okay. let's take a look at this chart that's at the bottom. And this is, something that's been, kind of based on our experience, right? So many of our clients come to us and they've been maintaining a small program, right? So they've been maintaining that program, maintaining with Excel spreadsheets, emails, and Google Forms, right? And it's been working okay, but they're reaching a point where they're getting stretched. And the performance and their ability to be able to keep up with the demand, right, is causing them to either make mistakes, either they're not giving the service level that they want to be associated with their brand, right, or their efforts, or it's getting to the point where they're not doing their real job. And their job, which used to be 10%, this incentive program has become 50%. This incentive program, their other marketings and lead gen and other efforts, are falling to the wayside. So a simple rule of thumb that we have here is if you have less than 50 participants and your total award spend is less than 25,000, you can probably keep doing that on Excel. That's something that is manageable and it really doesn't, the program may not be able to support the cost of an incentive software. And it may not be the point where you're stretched and not able to do some of your other duties and responsibilities. But when you start talking about more than 100 participants and more than 25,000, here are some things that I want you to consider, right? When you talk about getting an incentive platform to be able to help you out with this. So first thing I want to throw out there are some technical cost drivers, because they say, hey, I'm ready to engage a partner. I'm ready to get, some type of incentive platform. I'm looking, at some of these platforms out here, but I'm not really sure what things make a software package or software platform more expensive to implement or less expensive. Hey, that's why you came here to this webinar. You want answers. So one of the things, and Michael did a great job mentioning this, offer complexity, right? So the more complex the offer, the more expensive it'll take to code and be able to maintain over time. And once again, when we talk about, the Sonic example I gave before, they have a very simple offer on drinks. During this time period, it's half off. Doesn't change a whole lot. It's dependable. It's consistent, easy to program, easy to market. It's been that way for years and years, right? If they started saying that, well, maybe on Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be 25% off. Maybe every other Saturday, it's going to be 100% off. We'll give it to you free. Like, even though that's great, it's complexity, right? And that complexity not only makes it difficult to market, but also difficult to program. Some of the other things to consider when you talk about those costs, data integrations, when you integrate, it's always going to be a little more expensive. The more times our systems talk to get the information they need, and the more difficult it is for us to get the information we need, it just raises the cost. Also, some others are numerous award types. We are award neutral. We support many different award types, but if you support them all in one program, it's going to be a cost driver. Multiple catalogs. Let's say you want to do e-gift. I want to do regular traditional physical gift cards. I want to do virtual MasterCard. Also like to have virtual visas, and then a full card catalog internationally. All of those have a cost associated with them, and all of that would kind of come through in the expense of that particular solution. So that's one thing to consider for the drivers. One thing to consider for the benefits or the type of software package you want. There's 100% off-the-shelf SaaS solution, which is offered by a number of companies, right? So you get what you get. As long as you fall in the box, we'll play nice, you'll play nice. Or 100% custom. You can have everything you want for a nominal fee. So there's benefits to both of those strategies, but what we recommend is a platform that is 80% out of the box. Means that you can ramp up quickly, get your program out to the field, but also has 20% that you can customize and make it truly yours. So make sure that you ask how much customization can you add whenever you're looking for a technology partner. And one of the biggest advantages, and I can't stress this enough, with going with a software package is some of the innate securities that it offers around data. You can name probably 10 companies right now that have been hacked in the last 10 years, right? We had a client that came to us and they were running an international program and they were actually doing it on spreadsheets. Well, one question I ask is, how are you addressing GDPR compliance with your international UK customers? And there was a long pause, right? We know how to handle GDPR compliance, right? If you need to know General Data Protection Regulation, We do it all the time. It's part of our package, and we have solutions wrapped around it. That's one good reason that you may want to go with a software partner that has those solutions in place, does it every single day, so you don't get blindsided with a lawsuit. So those are some things to speak on that I just wanted to share as far as the advantage of technology. And Michael, any tips to share?
Yeah, probably on that first one here, you're leading in. I'll lead us out with that, a similar point. Looking at that table down on the bottom, if you're still in that left side of that table with less than 50 participants and less than 20 or so $1,000, it may be beneficial for you to keep tracking it through your Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. If not, reduce your soft costs and apply a technology solution, with the interactive website tools and backend database, those key features and benefits of adding that technology platform, like our Ignite platform, you really gain the advantage and are able to reduce your soft costs. And then from there, I think we go to our next tip, which is maximizing your budget. This is good, talking budget, always got to fall within budget. And Mike May, a fearless leader, taught me this kind of budget pie years ago. Ultimately, you want most of your money going to the end users' rewards for the motivational behavior that you put out there for them to achieve. So, what is that percentage? Realistically, let's just say 80%. The bigger the program, the more economies of scale, the more that number may increase. You see, we've got a range here from 70 to 85. But for the sake of a simple back of the napkin exercise here, let's call it 80%. So then we say, take the other 20%. You can really just even split it into 3 equal slices of pie. So lower right, we're talking about technology and the technology features and benefits of a platform like ours, Ignite. Communications, which is often the most overlooked of the 3, cannot overlook the significance of a strategic communications plan from pre-launch to launch through ramp up, and then obviously to keep the program fresh in the eyes of the potential achievers throughout the duration of the program, and even segmenting that messaging so that it's strategic. But communications often overlooked, shouldn't be. And then the last of those other pieces would be administration. So reducing the soft costs we talked about, that's what we spend our days doing. We've got teams of incentive professionals that help to deliver these programs, and there's really great efficiencies in there. And then we get the question all the time, what percent of revenue should we use to start to create that overall budget? This rule of thumb, 1% is probably a good start. Could be anywhere from 0.5% to 3%, again, depending on scale. And I think we probably got a tip here or comment from Stephen coming.
Yeah, I was going to say the rewards pie is really important, but one thing to consider to keep those reward costs down when you're looking for a partner is think about merchandise versus electronic delivery. E-gifts are becoming more and more popular, and they have low cost. There's no shipping cost obviously associated with those, and they're secure. You can make sure they're getting to the right person. You don't have to worry about porch pirates or it going to the wrong address. And then if you are going to do merchandise, which we do recommend, we're a reward agnostic, but merchandise does have a nice trophy value to it. But especially internationally, if you're going to offer merchandise, try to find a partner that ships from in country, because that way you're saving a lot of money on tax tariffs. You don't want to be shipping across borders. I mean, $100 item all of a sudden becomes a $145 item, even if you're just shipping from the US to Canada. So especially if you're operating in Europe or Asia, consider that if you're going to do merchandise to find an award partner that can at least fulfill, if not in country, at least in the region. That'll help control those costs when it comes to the rewards, because that is obviously the biggest part of your budget.
And before we leave this slide, thank you for that, Stephen. I just want to mention the budget calculator that we have. It's an online tool, 100% free. That budget calculator is amazing. Now, granted, I have a high opinion of it, but I've heard feedback from clients, feedback from even some of our prospects through the process and how useful the tool that is. So Sebastian, hopefully maybe you're planning on adding a link to that in the chat so people can take a look at that. But it is wonderful taking all of the different variables that whenever we go through our DDX process, we think about when we're helping our different clients plan out budgets. You can use this tool and be able to get a pretty close estimate of how much budget you need to allocate for what you want to accomplish. So just wanted to give a little kudos to that tool. Go out, use it. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource, 100% free.
And you will be able to find it in the slides when we send it out. So it will be linked, just an FYI, but I'll hand it back to you guys.
Okay, appreciate that, Sebastian. And let's talk about the next topic, which is being realistic, right? Because as excited as we are when we start our new incentive programs, we need to buffet that a little bit with realistic expectations. And not that we have low expectations, but realistic expectations. So some of the things that you want to consider whenever you're starting a new program that kind of help to buffet are, and actually if you can go to the next slide, Sebastian. So one is remember your audience, and it is all about your audience. And when you talk about the size of the different offers, when you talk about the different award types, even contest duration, you want to be able to cater a program that's attractive to the audience, but also understand that if you have an audience that are inside sales reps, right? These are employees of your company. You have a direct channel of communication. Things are going to ramp up a little quicker, right? You have an infrastructure to reach and get a message to them, and a pretty consistent message. If you're talking about a distributor or reseller channel, I mean, there's some distance between you. You're the manufacturer, you're providing the particular service, but they're the boots on the ground, and there may be 3 or 4, chains in between you and them. Give it some time. Those programs just take a while to ramp up. They're wonderful, they're engaging, they're necessary, right? That those outside sales reps are going to be asking for it, right, to compete against other people that are in the market. But at the end of the day, you need to give it time to grow. Sometimes their best means of communicating your program is word of mouth, one rep talking to another, and you need to make sure you give some time for that to happen. Another one we mentioned before is starting with the end in mind, right? So ultimately, we want to have successful programs, but we also want to be able to prove that those programs were successful. So we talked about the data, right? And making sure that you have access to the data and that the program is producing the type of data that can measure your goals and be able to know that you've achieved those goals. So make sure that you begin with the end in mind. What do you want to achieve? What do you need to prove that ROI? And make sure that it's part of your program and that you monitor that through the duration of the program. Another one we touched on is ramp up time. Hurts my spirit when we have a client that comes and says, you know what, this program just isn't taking off like we'd hoped. And we've done, the marketing campaign seems to be great. We have a wonderful drip campaign, but it just seems like we're not quite getting there. Some of that is unrealistic expectations of the ramp up time. Once again, outside sales, and it takes a while for the message to get out. Give it some time and you'll get there. And also make sure that you have the right awards. We've touched on that before, but make sure that the awards match not only the size of the deal, but also think about the median income of the participant. If you have a $5 gift card and somebody's making $150,000 a year, it just might not move the needle. So some things to consider. Stephen, anything to mention there?
I think you kind of touched on the direct versus indirect channels. Just keep that in mind. If you are running a program with the indirect channel, just be a little more patient. That ramp up time, it takes a little bit longer. With direct, we usually see 0 to 6 months. You're full go, ready to run. But with indirect, it just takes a little longer to get the audience engaged. So the ramp up time is closer to 3 to 12 months. And then you're really fully running in about 18 to 24 months. So definitely be patient with the indirect channel. But the good news is once you're up and running, these incentive programs really do become more like a loyalty program where the sales reps are loyal to your brand. So they're loyal to your brand and recommending your brand over the competitors. So keep that in mind that if you are patient, you're going to be rewarded at the end of the day with the brand loyalty. So, and that's another thing to keep in mind with the long ramp up time. If you're considering DIY, just know that there are some risk factors that come with that. That could cost you down the line. If you're going to run a program for 2 years, it might be fine for the first 6 months, but just keep in mind that there are some some issues with DIY that could cost you down the line.
Okay, good point.
And Sebastian, you can go to the next slide. Some of the issues with DIY that I touch on is you have less secure award fulfillment. One example is that with that is you might rely on regional or district managers to physically hand out the awards. You can't necessarily trust every employee to handle that process properly. So you could have lost awards. You could have awards not getting delivered at all. Just keep that in mind that, you know, you're trusting your workforce to hand deliver those. So there is some security issue there. You don't necessarily catch duplicate errors. You know, if you're using a system where you're entering sales order numbers, that system's going to catch that and prevent any duplicate claims from being paid out. And then also you just have overspend due to complexity and decentralization. So especially larger organizations, they become siloed. So we've seen examples where there's one company with 3 different silos and they don't realize they're running competing programs. So they could have the opportunity for their partners to double dip. So not only is that costing you as an organization, but it's also confusing your partners because they don't know what offer to submit for. So they'll just end up submitting for all 3 offers and potentially get paid out for all 3. So just keep that in mind. If you are going to run your own, that you do run those risks. And there was actually a study by Accenture that showed that most companies that run their own programs have 5 to 10% overspend. So you'll really make that money back up if you find the right partner. And I think Michael has some tips on actually finding that right partner.
Yeah, that's it. Leading us into the last point. So you could probably click twice too here, Sebastian, to get to the last one. Choosing the right partner. You know, good companies like Brightspot, we put ourselves in that category, will provide industry research, current trends, best practices, what we see in the industry, your industry segment, what's working, what's not working. Obviously, expert consulting on the design we've talked about, and ultimately overall cost savings. These incentives that are well designed and profitable really going to pay for themselves. So yeah, good stuff. We're going to wrap up here with the recap of the points. So identify your current state, define your behaviors, select the strategic products and services that best fit your current business objectives and team's marketing and sales roadmap. Use technology to your advantage, maximize the budget you're allocated, be realistic, and recognize the cost of doing it yourself, and consider choosing the right partner. So with that, I think we're going to turn it back to you. A quick half hour, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to talk incentives with you. And again, thanks to the audience for carving out some time today to join us. And Sebastian, I wonder if we got time for a Q&A or two, or
yeah, I think we have a question or two. Let me just speed right through this, because yeah, we're running a little bit of time over. So Q&A. So if you haven't already, please submit your questions. Quick promo. We just want to let you guys know we have 2 resources to share with you today. We have our 12.5 steps to a perfect incentive program, and we also have a channel partner rewards ebook, the complete how-to guide. And this is the time for Q&A. Let me just take a look at our questions. Okay, I think we have time for one question here. And question asked, thanks for the tips. What would you recommend as the next steps?
Next steps, I guess we're talking about getting started. So we're in the discovery phase throughout most of this current state, defining goals and behaviors. You know, next steps on our DDX process is design. So we take all that information that we would garner in a hour-long conversation. Again, we bring those questions to the table. But yeah, it's a collaborative session. And then internally, we get our subject matter experts, our solutions design team, Jason and Stephen, or someone on the incentive teams that would be a subject matter expert, help us to find the right solution. And then we turn that around to a proposal or quote with inclusions that we would talk through and see if we can't get to that final piece of that process, execution, and opportunity to work together. And again, ultimately drive business results through your motivational incentives.
Perfect. Yeah, I think since we're about 5 minutes over, we're going to wrap it up here. But thank you, Jason, Michael, Stephen, for hosting with us today. And we'll let everybody get back to their day. And thanks for joining us on our Bright Spot webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.